What's going on, everybody? Happy Wednesday live from the Starbucks on Route 66, somewhere outside of Pampa, Texas. It's me. Now, we are happy to announce a exclusive one-time partnership just today with Starbucks. If you head on over to your local Starbucks and enter promo code Vito's Power is out, and the internet's been out for the last 2 days, and he's, yes, wearing sweatpants and Crocs in a Starbucks like a common criminal, they might look at you a little weird. You might spend the night in county jail. But that's not my problem. Just kidding. I love y'all. I don't want you to get in any trouble. Don't try that out. I'm so excited to see you for the last broadcast of the year. As Jenna put it so eloquently, it has been a ride, and it's been a beautiful ride. An absolute. What color Crocs, Jared asked? They're camo Crocs. Look at that. The camo in sports mode. There you go. We're getting up close and personal here on the holiday episode. As Jenna mentioned so eloquently, it has been a wild ride, an amazing ride, a true blessing. Honestly, a true blessing for me to just call y'all friends. I think we could do that. Can we use the F word here, friends? I think we're all friends at this point. It just means the world to me. And with that being said, I want to introduce our special guest today, our very special guest today, who I'll go out on a limb and call a very good friend of mine. We've actually met IRL, which is rare in this game. But our very special guest, I've had the pleasure of working with her. I've had the pleasure of learning from her. She is the fraud operations manager at FlexCar. She is a fraud fighter extraordinaire, a founding member of Fraudcast University, and coming to us live from a place that's a little further away from you than Pampa, Texas. Give it up, everybody. And I think Jack Novak is in the building. Jack might know this person somewhat, maybe. Give it up. And I heard that this person was telling Jack that it's a little bit about not coming today, but here we all are. Give it up, everyone, for the one, the only, my good friend, your good friend, I think, soon to be best friend, Emma Linnane. Emma, how are you?
Thank you, Vito. I feel like every time I join these broadcasts, there's always like such a great introduction to the like wonderful guests you have every week. So I was like, I can't wait. Vito's going to say such nice things. So thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, I hope you didn't get preempted by the Croc reveal there. You know, you are more important than the footwear today. So I'm sorry about that. Emma, I did tease a little bit that you're calling in from parts unknown, parts disparate. Can you give us a little bit of a clue as to where you are on this Wednesday evening, perhaps?
Wednesday, yeah, it's Wednesday afternoon. My laptop is still in Boston time, so I don't know what time of the day it is. But yeah, I'm calling in from County Kerry in the southwest of Ireland. I don't know if my accent gives it away. I've been getting a lot of shtick this week for not having a strong enough accent or having too strong of an accent. So I go transatlantic. So it's yeah, not much of a hint anymore to have this strange accent that I have.
They're really getting on you. They're saying like you lost something when you came to the States. Is that
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's brutal. It's bad. So yeah, I try to make it stronger when I get here. So I don't know what mess it sounds like right now, but yeah, I'm trying real hard to sound like I've lived here forever.
Well, you're convincing this old boy here, so you don't need to worry about that. And I think this crew is also needs no convincing. But aside from accents, I mean, knowing you and knowing your story, I always pause. I'm just in awe of it. So getting into fraud is something we all wax nostalgic about, but for you, there's layers to that. So I'm just wondering if you could give us a little bit of a synopsis or a lot of bit of a synopsis, however much you want, about what led you to Boston, what led you to fraud, and shout out Shelly with the new hair color. What's going on, Shelly? How are you? What led you here? We would love to hear all about that. And for all of my friends who are listening in, we talk about the many winding roads. I think Emma's got one of the wildest, most awesome roads, most inspirational roads. So please, if you could give us a little there.
I sure will. I'll give you the TLDR, the shortened version, because it kind of goes on for a bit. But yeah, I am a dual citizen, so I'm very lucky to be able to go back and forth as I please. But I did grow up in Ireland, went to school here, went to college here. I started off in computer science, did not appreciate or like or enjoy that at all, and quickly moved on to something very similar, which was radio broadcasting, which my parents really loved. So started off in radio broadcasting and had to do an internship to finish that. And I decided, why not do my internship in Boston? I'm free to go and live and work there, so let's do that. So that radio career brought me to Boston for a couple of years, worked in radio in a tiny town in like the south of Massachusetts, South Shore of Massachusetts. moved back up to Boston. I unfortunately thought that this tiny town in the South Shore was Boston, not being from here, but it was a solid 2 hour drive from the city for someone who doesn't own a car. So that was pretty rough for a while. So moved up, worked for, a dinnerware company selling plates and selling dinnerware and selling china and, just on the phone all day talking with customers and trying to solve problems. And so trying to solve the problems was kind of what I always enjoyed. And so from there, I moved to a wonderful company called Zipcar, which was a car rental company. You rent cars by the hour. And from there, because it had this kind of startup vibe, you got to wear a lot of different hats, join in a lot of different departments. And so while I worked at the time in like a customer service type role, I was always really curious. People were always saying, oh, this happened to my account, or I didn't get into a car accident. I don't know why all the four wheels are gone. This kind of like behavior. I was always really curious, like, how do I prove them wrong? Or how do I know if they're lying or not? Or how do I prove that they're correct? And so I got into slowly started asking the fraud team and the security team, how can I track where this person was at 10 p.m. on a Tuesday night? Or, these kind of crazy questions. So I started slowly but surely getting into that, working in like as a claims analyst, looking at these damage claims. It was always came back to damage and accidents. I thought was really interesting because people are already frustrated. They've had this like pretty traumatic experience happen. You have to find out what happened while also being professional about it. And from there, I had this wonderful mentor join the trust and safety team, and he brought me on as the fraud and risk manager there. So worked there for several years doing like applications and chargebacks and looking at the VDMP programs. Unfortunately, had several fines from Visa while we got our chargeback process up and running. And after a couple of years, I ended up working at Wayfair with Jack Novak for several years, and obviously working with Vito. Worked there on fraud in a more commercial space. So looking at fraud contracts and working with wonderful vendors, deciding who we wanted to work with. And after that, I finally landed at my current role, which is FlexCar, similar to Zipcar, but a different type of company, offering different alternatives to car ownership. So again, working in similar fraud operations there, working with a team that does manual reviews, chargebacks, delinquencies, all a broad fraud umbrella. So yeah, that's kind of a quick overview of everything that's led up to this moment. And now I've gone all the way back to Ireland for the time being.
Poetic, full circle. This is the part in the Hallmark movie where you bop your head on something and you're having that kind of like, what could have happened? What if I didn't leave? But here you are. I can assure you that you're not dreaming this. You're not dreaming that you're talking to somebody at a Starbucks on Route 66. But all of that being said, Emma, and this is for everybody here. No joke, no smoke. Like, I have learned so much from Emma over the last 2-3 years, and I think a lot of that has to do with the depth of the breadth of your experience. How important is it to you, or like how useful has it been to you to have that experience with the customer side of the piece? And also, like, look, this is my truck right here. Don't dox me. I don't know if you could see the license plate or anything. That's my truck right there. So I'm someone who may or may not have thrown that State Farm tracker out the window when I was driving because I was so mad that it was catching me like speeding and all that. I know how people get with cars. So you had the car situation, which is ripe for fraud, and you were right there on the front lines with the customer. How do you think that's informed you as someone who's grinding, someone who's digging? Do you feel like it's burdened you with too much curiosity, or you feel like it's supercharged you for all the wackiness that our modern world has to throw at you?
I definitely would think the latter. I think like having to like working on like a customer service or customer success or like even customer experience, I think having to find all of the answers and be able to explain it in a way that makes someone like accept your answer, especially coming from like a customer. If I have to explain what happened to a customer, why their account has been locked, or why we had to do 2FA on their password, or whatever type of scenario, I feel like I need to fully understand the whole situation and get extra pieces so that I can wrap that up nicely and call the customer and say, this is what happened, this is why it happened, and this is why we did what we did. So, and I know you and I have talked about this in the past, but I think everyone needs to be sitting at customer experience or customer, service at some stage in their career, because I think actually listening and getting the like direct feedback rather than looking at reports, or rather than just like, kind of bundling up summaries every month or every week. I think it's super helpful to have to be responsible enough to talk to someone and say, this is why that happened. And obviously we can't talk directly to every single customer, but having that kind of responsibility, or having, you have to explain something to someone in a way that makes sense to them, really helps to like fully understand the problem in a way that solves the question at the end of the day. So if you think of what you have to do in terms of getting good CSAT or good customer service scores, like think of that as like your end goal, even when working in fraud or marketing or security or whatever type of department it is. Being able to understand your job well enough to explain it in a customer service friendly way, I think has been super helpful for me. And I always think of that every time that there's a problem. I'm like, I need to be able to, like, understand this well enough to explain it to a customer who's already upset with us. So I think that's been a super helpful way to look at each task that I've had.
Would you, and by the way, Marcy and Jamie agree wholeheartedly in the chat here. Marcy says, I've always felt like a role in customer service is a life requirement. Jamie goes one step further and says, and food service. And for all of you know, when I run for president of these United States, my only platform is going to be that we're going to reinstitute a draft. It's not going to be a military draft, though. It's going to be a draft into food service. So everybody has to serve in restaurants. So vote for me whenever that happens. Don't do it. You don't want that. King of Starbucks here. But Emma, I want to jump back onto that train that we've got going on here. Flexing that conversational muscle. And by conversational muscle, I mean the ability to recontextualize a broad data issue, right? The zeros and ones issue into the voice of the customer. Do you think that's also benefited you when it comes to explaining what's going on to leadership, cross team, all that kind of stuff? Do you think, am I just grasping at straws? They didn't give me a straw with this one. I didn't ask for it. Am I just grasping at straws on this? Or do you think that helped flex that muscle for you? Because you are doing amazing things. You are a fraud ops manager. You are not one of the bottle, as Jose Mourinho would say. Do you think that's helped you?
Yeah, no, I definitely do. And I think like something that we always did at Wayfair, and I think Jack, even if he's still here and hasn't listened to my threats of asking him to leave, but something that we always had to do was like, every sentence or every paragraph or every deck had to be like answer first. You start off each sentence with like the headline, which might seem kind of obvious, but each individual thing has to be the answer first, and then you follow that up with like the explanation and the cause and the effect. And so I think that's also a helpful way of looking at it. So if you can explain something in a way, in the right tone to a customer, you can also do that to like leadership and other departments. And so it definitely took a while for me to learn how to transition from like a customer facing explanation and like summarize or summary of what we need to explain over to a leadership thing. But I think having that answer first mentality, where we start with either the good or the bad news and then follow it up with the need to know information afterwards, has been a really good way of talking to leadership in any job that I've had.
Take note of that. We're going full circle on a lot. If we go all the way back to the conversations we had with Brian Davis earlier in the year, we talked a lot about flipping the algebra and having the answer first. Emma said it even better, I think, where you lead with that answer. You kind of jump to the end. Because people are in a rush. People are very important, and they need to know the things like up front. Remember that, y'all. That is a gem, and there's many more gems to come, by the way. We've got 30 people here. I know some of you might have questions, definitely have questions for our guests. So please feel free, there it is, to come off mute and ask them at any time. We got Paula Zahn in the room. Paula, what's up? Emma, chargebacks, hunting chargebacks, being like a Buffy the Vampire Hunter for chargeback, Slayer, Hunter, whatever, seems to be like your favorite role, if I may, go out on a limb. What is it? We heard a lot about red boxes last week and some kind of tips there. What is it with you? What is it with you? My grandma used to say, what is it with you, Vito? What is it with you? Why do you love to go after them so much?
It's a good question, and like maybe kind of lame, but I think when I first started at Zipcar, which was 2 roles ago, my first week in the job as like, a fraud manager, I was like, buying books on like how to be a manager. And I was like, so nervous, like I wouldn't be like a good manager. I was kind of young back then and like just so nervous about it. Day 2, I think my manager went out on paternity leave. And on day 3, we got the VDMP, like fine or the fee, whatever that was back then. I think it's like a couple $1,000s. And we had to fill out the remediation plan. So this is day 3 on the job. I'm already super nervous. And I have to fill out this document and explain to leadership why we got this like $5,000 or $10,000 fine. I can't remember what it was, but so I had to learn everything I had to know about chargebacks like super fast. We had to get the remediation plan in that week. And so I spent like a solid couple of days just like heads down learning everything there was to know about chargebacks because I wanted to do a good job, obviously. So I think that was where it started, where I was like, okay, I know everything there is to know back then. Obviously, every single thing about chargebacks and VDMP has since changed, but that's where it started from. And I think just like it kind of makes sense, like people coming back to the customer service side of thing, a lot of the chargebacks that we get, and I'm sure this is the same for nearly everyone in e-commerce, a lot of them are friendly fraud. And so even just breaking it down, like breaking down the fraud chargebacks to see like how much percentages of this is friendly fraud and how much is true fraud, like finding that like data set was actually super helpful because we could take the like true friendly fraud and say, okay, well, some of these customers are going to do this, whatever we do. Like we can't control the human part of that. But some of them, it's, like billing descriptors are unclear, or like, we're just not being super clear in our customer experience. We're not being clear in our messaging or our subscription messaging. And so a lot of them, it was like a built out to-do list of what I needed to do to make a good job. And so I think that's why I really liked chargebacks, because here's 10 chargebacks, 5 of them are for this reason, 5 of them are for this. Go fix these issues. And so it's a nice kind of way to just get started in a role, is to like fix the chargeback problem. And then last week we talked all about red boxes and how to like put together a neat, nice little like document on how to represent these with the banks. And I was actually thinking about that all week, and I fear that it's probably no longer applicable, because I'm assuming if it's not happening already, the people who are looking at our nice, neat representment docs with stickers and smiley faces, that has to be AI, right? Like, I don't know people who work in chargeback representment on the bank side, but I fear the red boxes are not going to cut it anymore. So we're going to have to start thinking of what the next step is to like give an AI agent what it needs to win the dispute on our side. So that's a little bit about why I love chargebacks. It's a pre-written to-do list for yourself.
Well, maybe if we just add like annoying M dashes and emojis, that seems to be the AI language anyway. So maybe that's the next frontier. And Emma, questions are rolling in for you, and I have to do my due diligence and ask them of you. We've got Katerina coming in, and Katerina, feel free to come off mute and ask away. But she asks, Emma, do you see any difference between fraud in America and Europe? I'm going to guess yes. 3DS and all these other fun things are there as well. Emma, what do you think about that? It's a big one, but I know you've probably got an opinion on that right there.
It's a great question. And nearly all of my career has been in America, but obviously I come back a lot. I think a lot of it is in the, like, just maybe like cultural differences, aside from all the regulatory, like 3DS. Like, I grew up with 3DS. I was always very aware of it. I didn't realize it was this big thing. We'd be going on to Ticketmaster, buying your concert tickets and having to physically log into your bank as well. So I was like, oh, we're already used to that. That's not a problem. Why are we not implementing that today? But besides that, I think there's maybe just some like cultural differences I think play into it as well. Like I talked to one of my friends last week, she saw fraud on her card, and I said, why don't you just do a chargeback? And she was like, what's that? And I was like, oh, it's so nice. I can't believe that you're saying that. So that was just really nice, which is not a very common thing to do chargebacks. I mean, like, credit cards aren't as very common, or just lines of credit aren't very common in Europe, as, in comparison to America. So I think just that difference is like the biggest thing that I would see. If people don't typically they don't look at chargebacks as the first line of like resolution a lot of the times. I find that they will contact customer service more often than not when looking for a resolution, rather than going to their banks right away. I think the banks don't make it as easy as they do in the US to do a chargeback. This whole fraud protection is not as big of a selling point yet than it is. But here we're seeing like neobanks are like the biggest. I think most people in Ireland now use Revolut rather than like a standard traditional bank. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see what types of fraud come out of that in the next couple of years. But I always feel so lost when I come here and everyone wants to Revolut everything instead of Venmo. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes. And I'm assuming as Revolut starts growing in America, they will start adding credit possibly. And so we'll probably see that translated to fraud here.
I was reading a Rolling Stone interview with you from a couple of months back, and I believe it said that you didn't get your first credit card until you came to the US. Is that true?
That is true. Yeah, I don't think any of my friends even own a credit card here. My mom got her first like debit card last year. She used to use like a physical ATM card up until then. So yeah, my only credit cards are American credit cards. I don't have any Irish ones. I have Revolut, and that's it.
Well, shout out Caleb Hammer. I don't know how many of you watch Caleb Hammer, but I think if you're not getting onto the credit card train too early, you might be avoiding a whole lifetime of pain and debt. And what I know about reading Charles Dickens' Debtor's Prisons and all that kind of thing. So maybe it's good. But you got another question coming in here, Emma, from our very own Ryan McDonald. Ryan, by the way, I just texted him earlier. LinkedIn tells me that Ryan and I were in contact with one another the most this year. So bestie hearts to Ryan, heart emojis in the chat, please. Ryan asks Emma, and Ryan, feel free to come off mute and expand on this. Do you see any differences in how customer service handles the person involved in / victim of fraud in America versus Europe? This is really, I like to hear this answer, so I'm going to mute myself.
I think nowadays the difference has gotten smaller. I think, if we looked at it maybe 10 or 15 years ago, it would have been, and probably similar in America as well, but it would have been a lot more local. You would probably know who you were talking to more often than not when you called customer service. Amazon probably wasn't as huge of a thing. And I'm talking probably specifically about Ireland now when I say a lot of these, like, I'm looking at these bigger countries. They're not exactly the same, but I'm from a small town, so I'm just thinking specifically about us. But yeah, it would have been more local, and so not as you wouldn't have to call several lines of defensive customer service looking for an answer. And so nowadays it's very similar. My mom calls me all the time if she gets like, a 2FA or MFA text, and she's like, is this correct? Like, is this spam? And so, she is very on board with how it works nowadays. And so I think looking 5 years ago, most folks wouldn't have been as familiar with like different types of fraud protection when they call customer service. But nowadays I don't see much of a difference. It's handled very similar to the US, just because a lot of, any types of websites that we have in the US, we're also having in Europe now because everything is so global. So a lot of the fraud practices remain the same, which is nice to see. We're not getting any more fraud. Our customer service is just as equipped to handle fraud here as it is in the States.
Well, thank you, Emma. That's super helpful. And I kind of have a piggyback question from that. I mean, I've worked in customer service for years, so I always appreciate when I get to talk to a customer service person, even on the 1-800 number, just because I know what they've been through, and I try to give them a good experience. So like, I guess on that, kind of a question that stems from that is, do you feel that kind of with this starting to mitigate more and more, and you're finding that more of your customer service is less local, do you find that there's differences or experience changes around like localized bias, like learning that someone is not in your jurisdiction and how you handle, versus professional courtesy bias, someone on the phone who can empathize with you because they've been in that same role, and how they might be treated because they can guide the conversation knowing the challenges that the CS agent is in? Does that make sense?
That does make sense. And yeah, I think like looking at it from two different angles, like calling someone where it's like a local, you can kind of relate a little bit more, and you can say, oh, well, I had that issue as well last week, and here's what I did. Years ago at a call center job I got a customer on the phone, and, I think his wife was Irish. And so we just kind of like instantly connected. It was nice to be able to talk to him. And there probably was some like local bias there, even though we were both living in different places. And it turned out to be one of my favorite customer experiences like I ever had. And like I was the agent. So I think there is some sort of bias when talking to people, but I think nowadays, like with the right training, with the right SOPs, like, you can 100% train any customer service agents to like have the same experience with customers, no matter where they're talking or who they're talking to. But I think it's helpful. My mom, again, coming back to her now that I'm here, she loves talking about fraud, but she'll say, I talked to this person, they were great, and we had to like call this person and this, they kind of go around in loops. And my parents do have very strong Irish accents. And so sometimes they're like, none of us can understand anyone. So they're all laughing on the phone. And it ends up being like a funny story at the end of the day. But yeah, I think there is, there's probably going to be some biases in it. But I think, any of the customer service agents, once they're trained in fraud, and it's not, a regular sales customer service line, I think once you're training your agents and like giving them the equipment they need to accurately answer a question, I think it makes the whole situation or the whole call experience just as well if it was like a local customer service team.
That is helpful. No, I appreciate that, because I've tested that myself with my partner. She's a little more passionate, if you will, with customer service. And we had an instance 2 weeks ago where we talked to the same person. I called them back but I took the approach of empathizing. I've been in your shoes. Thank you. I understand. And I will tell you, it was a night and day difference. Like, she was totally triggering their fight or flight, and they were panicking, but then kind of taking the approach of like, I get it. Why don't we just peel this back? Let's just look at it. This is my problem. This is what I need. Cut the fluff. Like, it was just so funny how I could tell that they were just a completely different person. Like, I discarded them. They were just like, oh, but then at the other side, I feel like they would tell me anything I wanted to know at that point too, because now they trust me, and it took me 2 minutes just by pressing the right buttons. So
yeah. Now you're getting into the social engineering side of it, and you're like, this actually is really easy. Like, I can.
it's not hard. It is, because they deal with so much BS that if you're that one little bit of niceness, as Vito is very familiar with, that's all it takes to blow the whole thing wide open.
That's all it takes every single time. And it's fascinating that it takes people a lot to figure that out. Because, you're already frustrated, you're calling customer service, you're on hold. But I mean, most of us have been in that position in one way or another. So if you're just that extra bit nice, like, yeah, that one customer I spoke to years ago, I, sent him the whole thing for free. Super nice. That he was just nice for 10 minutes. I'm like, that's how it works. So I feel like everyone should do that. That's my lesson for the day. I'm done. Just be nice to customer service.
We're ending people gonna people, right? We're re-peopling the people who are peopling, and we're figuring out what that peopling is like. And you know what? When we started talking about that, I saw a lot of faces come online here. I want to say hi to Cameron Allen. Cameron, I think this is the first time we're seeing you. How are you? What's going on? Feel free to come off mute and introduce yourself if you feel like it. How are you, Cameron?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you for introducing me. This is my first broadcast I'm joining in on. I'm just glad to be here and listen to everyone's stories. And yeah, I'm always ears are open. I'm here to learn.
Welcome, Cameron. You picked a great day to do it. And it last, hot seat for you, Cameron, but very much a cool throne. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Boyertown, PA, right outside of Philadelphia.
Go Steelers. Well, go Eagles for you, maybe. There you go. Hey, there you a little bit of a better team, right? Better team this time. No Aaron Rodgers slander here. I'm a fan, but what are you gonna do? Cameron, welcome. We've also got Becca. You came on. Shelly, you came on. I mean, the golden rule is a way to live life, says our own Tim Weisenberg. Tim, well said. And Shelly saying that you do the same thing with your husband, and you're the super nice one. I would not want to cross you as a customer support person. I'll say that much.
Listen, I'm also a trained interviewer, so it's probably a bad idea. I listen with the active listening, and I know exactly what you're saying. But no, you got to kill them with kindness in the beginning. Listen to them, tell them exactly what you want, but in a really nice voice. And what did my old friend my previous job when I was interviewing a lot, I was referred to as the sparkly ninja. I'm really nice. And then suddenly you've said too much. And you don't know what to do, and you just sit there and look at me in silence. Those are my theft interviews, but you do the same thing. And I had this with the Delta situation. I had a flight canceled, and it was horrible. No, a flight delay, which caused cancellations and all this stuff. And at the end, the lady's like, "This is all I can do for you." I was like, "Yeah, but it's not, because I've already looked at your website." And she's like, "Well, I also can't do this." I said, "Yes, but see here, this is not a me problem. This is a you problem, and it's now your job to fix it. Because I missed my flight because you guys understaffed your pilots. And then I missed my second flight. And right now I should be drinking a cocktail on a beach in the Virgin Islands, but I'm not."
If you want to come for Susie, you better bring the receipts. Bring the receipts. Exactly. Well, Shelly, are you, if you don't mind, we could edit this out. Are you planning to be drinking a cocktail at Virgin Islands or any islands anywhere this holiday season? Are you getting out of the office for a little bit?
I'm getting out of the office a little bit, yes, because I work for most of you, I work remote from home all the time. So no islands for me. The islands that you see behind me were my visit to the islands, because weirdly enough, after 45 minutes on the phone call, I got on the next flight out the next morning by telling them multiple times that you could just upgrade people to first class, because I wasn't paying for first class.
If you join the side Slack for exclusive content from Shelly on how to upgrade yourself this holiday season on the sly. So well done there. Love it. The sparkly ninja. The characters just seem to just emanate from you. I love it. We have some more questions that are great. And actually, this came to my mind when you were talking about this, Emma. My brother from another mother, Matthew Blanchard. Matthew, how are you? Matthew asks, you mentioned first party fraud. What has been the best way for you to determine first party fraud over the years? Has it been different from the America side versus the European side? Emma, I'm wondering, is it that like roll up your sleeves, hardcore, like digging, find a Facebook post of somebody like, playing with the thing that they said they didn't get from you? Or is there a little bit of sleuthing that is more, a little sharper than that? Or is it both?
It's definitely a little bit of both. The Facebook sleuthing is my favorite. I feel like I have to have a disclaimer at work because there's frequently, Facebook or Instagram on my monitors at my desk in the office. And I feel like I have to say I'm not browsing social media, like I'm looking for fraud. So I have that little sign on my desk to be like, I'm not doing, personal stuff at work. But yeah, I think when I worked at Zipcar, we had a really good way of doing it. It was a bit of analytics versus a bit of like rolling up your sleeves and doing the manual review. We would frequently look at all of the chargebacks and we would compare it against a list of customers who had already been, like closed by our security team or like had like an active like repo order on their account or had like an accident. We would try and take away any customers that we knew were bad or fraudulent or had some sort of like major flag on their account that they had, misbehaved or, used the service in a way that wasn't applicable. We would subtract those from all of the chargebacks. We would look at some other kind of indicators that said this is very likely fraud or at the very least very bad behavior. And we would subtract the worst of the worst from the chargebacks. And we were left with a bit of a 40-60 split of like friendly fraud versus first party fraud, versus like traditional fraud. And that was kind of how we got our average, like, let's look at this and see how we can start to dig out, okay, for the friendly fraud ones, what were the top 5, categories of why they disputed it or like what charge categories it was, whether it's subscription fee or, mileage fee or whatever we had at the time. So trying to just look at other flags that we had internally in our own system and subtracting the worst of the worst from our own fraud chargebacks, that was a helpful way for us to determine what was friendly fraud and what wasn't. And then you can start, depending on what your data set size is, you can start to like individually look at each customer and say, do I think this is fraud? So, we could also subtract like, anyone where the AVS and the CVV doesn't match, or if like they had added 3 new cards to their account this week, or if the shipping and billing, all these kind of like other fraud indicators that you can have, you could start to subtract some of those from that like master list as well, so that you're left with a sort of split that looks good that sort of matches your expectations. So going in, I think typically I've seen like a 60-40 or a 70-30 split on fraud versus friendly fraud. And at both of those companies that I worked at, we had a very high barrier to entry. You're looking at selfies and driver's licenses and then comparing that against like the Department of Motor Vehicles. So it was difficult to like fraud us up front. But then after that, it was where we would see the true fraud. So looking at those sort of high risk categories, taking them out of the list, then you're left with your split was how we frequently did it.
Elucidation through subtraction. Matthew, is this tracking? Do you feel like this is helpful? Would love to hear from you.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I was wondering, so yes, that is helpful. But it sounds almost like there's a sense of like having that background in open source intelligence and being able to dig deeper onto what is open out there on the interweb, so to speak. So have you found certain sites or certain areas that have really been good for you to target? I know social media, but has there been any other types of, PII or types of sites that are open source based that you've been able to leverage to help with friendly fraud connections?
Yeah, I mean, Ryan McDonald can probably answer this better than I can. Social media is the best way to do it. Frequently looking at Facebook, looking at like friends of friends Facebook. Like that's where I really started to find they have their page locked down. It's a really easy way to someone in their family doesn't have a private page, and so going in there, looking at the photos, looking at the likes. I find Facebook and Instagram are definitely to find if they are who they say they are. Yeah. Pass it to Ryan. I'm sure he has some absolutely for you.
No, you're spot on. And I was to say, family connections are the best for finding people telling on someone else. There's always that dad or uncle who's excited to share the once in a lifetime opportunity and make sure everyone else can be aware, not knowing he's publicizing the incriminating activity of his family member. That is probably one of the most common ways that that's solved. Is the first thing you look for is identify the person, use consumer records, and then from there, who can we pick on that's going to make this super easy? Because they probably are shutting down their account, creating a dog puppet, but they're not telling mom and dad to do it. And mom and dad are the definition of digital information, so they're likely going to make a mistake.
Generally speaking, how often are you spending on this per week? So if you've got a small team, I'm trying to understand the bandwidth is what I'm trying to get at. So like if I go to senior leadership and say, hey, I'm going to dedicate somebody to do 8 hours a week on just going into open source intelligence and trying to connect the dots between chargebacks and friendly fraud. Can you kind of give me a flavor on like how much y'all are spending on it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think for me, I have a very small team. I have like 4 agents right now doing chargebacks, and the bandwidth that I save for doing this open source investigation is typically just for representing chargebacks. If I'm really trying to like connect the account holder and the card holder, and if I have a gut feeling that I do think that they're related and this isn't just someone stealing a credit card off the internet, like I'll do some diving. In a given week, I don't have the bandwidth to put like a full-time employee on this, but I might spend, maybe like 2 to 3 hours a week, like doing this, just in the examples where I think these 2 folks are related. Last week, I found that these 2 people were like indeed married, and the wife had their wedding photos, his first full legal name, her full legal name, her card was on the account, and so we're able to screenshot and red box all of that and send it. But if I had the bandwidth, I probably would do it for more chargebacks that I think that they're related, but I can't prove it. So I think you could probably have someone doing maybe 8 hours a week, but it depends on, again, what tools you're using and what sources you have to help you doing the open source investigation. Because for me, it's literally just facebook.com and going down the family tree.
Jared brings up a great point. Emma, you need to trademark the red box. You're getting red box. You're red boxing. I'm busy red boxing. Don't talk to me. I'm red boxing. Not red boxing till I have my coffee. I see all the T-shirts already. This is going to be a great venture for you. We got Carrie Golden. Little radar love coming through here. Carrie asks, how many chargebacks are you responding to in a week generally? If we don't want to give up the ghost here, Emma, how much of your, one person on a 40-hour week, how much time is being, kind of allocated to responding to chargebacks?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think, in terms of like, what is our representment rate? We obviously try to not represent every single chargeback. If there's ones where it looks like true fraud, we won't spend time there. We don't want to, really anger Visa, MasterCard by representing true fraudulent chargebacks. So we'll try to aim for, a high number. I don't know how much information we can give out, but in terms of like hours spent on doing chargebacks, the volume isn't very high currently. So we will maybe spend half our day doing chargebacks, like maybe 3 to 4 hours. We have like a very small team. We might have 2 folks doing this on any given business day. So we could maybe spend like 3 to 4 hours a day doing chargebacks. And that's just one segment of like the fraud tasks that my team does on any given week. But if we're up to me, it will probably be, 6 or 7 hours a day doing them to like really get the red boxes like exactly where we need them to be.
Carrie, what do you think about that? Cool?
Yeah, I think it's great.
Awesome.
Which, by the way, named after County Kerry in Ireland.
Nice. Love to hear it.
Yes, the Brennans, the O'Briens.
Love it.
Fraudcast family, my friends. Fraudcast family. I'm full Irish too. You can tell by the last name. So there you go. Emma, it's been a pleasure having you out here. 45 minutes is not long enough for you. And guess what, y'all? You'll hopefully be, if Emma's not sick of the Fraudcast after this, you'll hopefully be seeing her again in the new year. So I wanted to give you the opportunity to close out 2025. No pressure here, Emma. I want to give you the opportunity to close out the 2025 calendar year Fraudcast with your message of peace, hope, and understanding. What do you think is going to be the, kind of the pain point, the pressure, where people should really be spending their most time coming into 2026. What do you think is going to help? What do you think is going to hurt? What do you think we got to throw out? And what's the baby that we got to keep with the bathwater? A lot of questions there, but basically, the floor is yours, my friend. You can sell anything you want here. It's just been an absolute pleasure having you out.
Yeah, thank you. It's been really great being here today. But yeah, I think for 2026, I know we didn't talk about it too much, but I think obviously returns are a big one coming into the new year. I know there's folks saying that returns are going to be bigger. Like return fraud is bigger than payment fraud in 2026, allegedly. So that's obviously something that a lot of us in e-commerce need to look out for. So I think that's a big one. I think chargebacks and AI is going to be what we're seeing this year. I think that's going to change a lot. We did not touch mostly on VAMP, so I'm very happy about that. But that's obviously as we start kind of getting our ground lines on like where everyone sits within the VAMP guidelines, like where do we all lie within that threshold? That's going to be something that we'll have to monitor, have to track closely internally and really get those numbers from our acquirers. So that's something to keep an eye out for. And then the red box, that might be the last thing of 2025 for us. So I'm not sure if that's going to be needed or wanted by our AI agent overlords next year. So we'll have to just see what, how they digest these representment docs that we spend so much love and care putting together. So I think those are the top things that I will be personally looking out for. And in terms of the passing message, I think, we talked about this at the Thanksgiving episode. Burnout is very real. I have a younger sister who loves TikTok, and her favorite thing to say is, we're on a floating rock. Don't worry about anything. We're on a floating rock. And I think it is, while very silly, also very true. So we can all enjoy this, have fun in fraud, and learn to love the chaos of it. But we can leave it there at the end of the day, and we're on a floating rock. Doesn't even matter. So that's it's my hippie sign off for the day.
That means so much to me to hear. It really does. I laughed, but all of us here have worked our tuckuses off this year. You're come to a podcast every week to talk about your work. You are all gluttons for punishment, my friends. But it's just great to be in this fight with you. It's great to be inspired by all of you. And I want to end 2025 with a little bit of embarrassment. I was going to write a Christmas or a Fraudmas poem for you, and I started, and then my power went out. That's my excuse. And then I came here, and Emma brought up the V word, vamp, and it went a little bit like this. 'Twas the night before Fraudmas, when all across campus, not a student was stirring, though Visa tried to vamp us. And then I just stopped. I was so grossed out by myself. So there you go. I'm not gonna torture you with any more of that. From the bottom of my heart, I would just like to really thank you for this year. You're all a beautiful bunch. Like, really have done a lot for my spirit, my soul. Jessica, Becca, Matthew, Cameron, welcome. Shelly, Jamie, Jared, Taylor, all of you, Justin, my man, who has stolen all of my favorite baseball players in one fell swoop. Only you can do this to me, and I'd still look at you with eyes of love, my friend. Just Marcy. Marcy, Ben, Hollywood's Ben Lee, Preston, who graced us with such an amazing time last week. Colleen, Renuka, my favorite Canadian of them all of you, Lynn, Katerina, just thank you all so much. Who knows what 2026 will bring, my friends? But I can guarantee you one thing. As long as my heart's still beating and blood is coursing through these veins, kind of gross, I will be your tireless servant. I'll be here for you, no matter if I'm in Starbucks, if I'm trapped in the truck, or if I'm back on the ranch. I'm always here for you. And I'm looking forward to what we're going to accomplish together in 2026. Emma, you brought us out. I just said a little thing. I would love if Jenna could bring us out here. Please, Jenna.
Okay, I really can't. You can't set me up like that. Where you think the most beautiful announcement that I'm being like, okay, everybody. Well, I had a really great time. See you guys next year. No, but it's been a lovely time with all of you. Seriously, you guys make Wednesday my favorite day of the week. I love learning with all of you guys, and I am super excited for what we're going to be doing for 2026. So I hope you guys have a great holiday season, and take it easy. Kind of going off of the same sort of what Emma was saying with we're all just on a floating rock. Everything is at the end of the day okay. So super excited. And yeah, so thanks so much for joining us for the last episode of the year, guys. We'll see you next year.
Love y'all. Love y'all so much. Love to your
Bye.
families.
Thank
Say
you all.
Uber. Take an Uber.
Peace.
No drinking and driving.
Is-
See you guys.